Okay, decided to go back and do a second portion of the Mishnah Elucidated. Since we visited last, we've had a death in the family, and I want to dedicate this learning to the memory of my brother Bobby. So we talked about, back to this page, we talked about the 39 categories of prohibited labor. We mentioned the primary labors and the derivative labors. We talked about liable and exempt, which basically refer to whether it is a biblical or a rabbinical commandment. And then we talked lastly about inadvertent and deliberate transgressions. So today I'd like to talk about part 2 of this first chapter of general introduction, and that is the calculated labors. There's a broad principle that is unique to the laws of Shabbat. The Torah prohibited only calculated labor. This too is derived from the construction of the Mishkan. The Torah describes Bezalel, the master craftsman who led the construction, as follows. And this is in Genesis 35, 31 through 33. And he, God, filled him with the Spirit of God in wisdom and insight and knowledge and in every craft to perform whatever manner of calculated labor. So the sages infer from these words that one is not biblically liable for doing a melachah or a prohibited labor on Shabbat unless it is calculated. Two concepts are implied here: intent and design. The concept of intent requires that the act be a planned one and that the plan be accomplished. The concept of design implies that the labor be creative or part of a creative process. The principle of the Torah prohibited only calculated labor is a wide-ranging, complex principle that leads to several secondary rules. An unwitting act, for example, is when a person does something accidentally without intention of doing it, and even without realizing that it might occur. This is called an unwitting act. Since the act was an accident, he is not considered to have sinned. An example would be someone who set out to cut a vegetable that had already been picked, but his hand slipped and he uprooted a different vegetable that was still growing, thus unwittingly performing the melachah of reaping. The second category, B, is an unintentional act. When a person does a permissible act and as a result of this act a second forbidden act also occurs, the second act is called an unintentional act. In contrast to the unwitting act mentioned above, the person in this case realizes that the prohibited act might occur, but he has no intention of doing it. For instance, he drags a chair across the ground in such a way that he might possibly make a furrow in it, thus plowing. There he finished it, which is the melachah of plowing. Although he is aware that he might make a furrow, he does not intend to do so. His only intention is to move the chair from one place to another. Thus, even if a furrow does result, his act of plowing is unintentional. He is therefore exempt from biblical liability. The sages disagree on whether such an act is permitted according to rabbinical law as well. Rabbi Yehuda holds that it is rabbinically forbidden, since the person realizes that the melachah might occur as a result. According to Rabbi Shimon, however, the act is completely permitted, since he did not intend for the melachah to occur. Inevitable result. This is one of my favorite sayings, and I kind of use it here and there, or philosophical concepts, I guess is a better word for it. The previous dispute applies where it is possible but not certain that the prohibited act will occur. If the permitted act will definitely result, the melachah is forbidden, even according to Rabbi Shimon. For example, Rabbi Shimon would agree that dragging a heavy chair across the soft ground is prohibited, since in that case a furrow will certainly be made. This type of situation is known as, literally, can one cut off its head and it will not die. The analogy is drawn to a person who cuts off the head of a chicken, which inevitably will cause the animal's death. Labor that is destructive and not considered melachah is not considered melachah, and one is not liable for doing it, although it is rabbinically prohibited. Thus, for instance, although lighting a fire is melachah, prohibited labor, one is not liable for destroying something by setting it on fire, from the concept of Shabbat. We're not talking about tort liability and arson and all that type of stuff. That's not what we're talking about here. In some circumstances, however, destruction is a necessary preparation for something constructive, such as demolishing a structure in order to build a new one in its place, or erasing writing in order to write something else in its place. In both of those cases, the destructive act is considered a melachah because it is part of a purposeful design. And I think that makes good sense. I think let's keep going. Part D, an act performed in an unusual manner. One is not liable for doing a melachah in a manner that is significantly different from the normal way of performing the act, although this too is rabbinically forbidden. So you're breaking a rabbinical law rather than a biblical law. As long as the change is significant, the action does not meet the biblical definition of melachah. For example, if a right-handed person writes with his left hand, he is not liable for the act of melachah, writing. This type of action is called literally change, or literally with the back of the hand. So some people use this, for example, in working in a hospital, for example, and writing is prohibited, but one may need to write something, and it is allowed, although you're breaking a rabbinical commandment, to write with the opposite hand. Now, there are tons of rules that talk about whether or not you can work in the hospital to begin with. That's not our point here. Labor not needed for its defined purpose. Melachah has a defined purpose, as explained below. There is a question as to whether one who performs melachah is biblically liable only if he does so for its defined purpose, or if he does so for some other reason. This too is subject to a dispute between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Yehuda rules that a labor not needed or performed for its purpose is biblically melachah, while Rabbi Shimon holds that it is not. Everyone agrees, however, that it is rabbinically prohibited. And then they go over the what is meant by the defined purpose. I think we can kind of skip that part for right now, and that ends up with us starting at sometime in the future, hopefully, on additional Shabbat restrictions. I got a little further than this in the airplane, so anyway, it's quite interesting, and I hope you enjoy it. Now, for my brother, we are ending his 7-day mourning period, and I would like to say a mourner's Kaddish for him. In 30 days from when he passed away, we will again say mourner's Kaddish for him. So I got out of Kippah. We're ready to go. The mourner's Kaddish. Yis Gadal V'yet Kadash Shemei Rabbah. May God's great name be exalted and hallowed throughout the created world, as is God's wish. May God's sovereignty soon be established in your lifetime and in your days, and in the days of the whole house of Israel. And we say, Amen. May God's great name be acknowledged forever and forever. May the name of the Holy One be acknowledged and celebrated, lauded and worshipped, exalted and honored, extolled and acclaimed, though God, who is blessed, but who is truly beyond all acknowledgement and praise or any expression of gratitude or consolation ever spoken in the world. And we say, Amen. May heaven bestow upon us and upon all Israel life and abundant and lasting peace. And we say, Amen. May the Holy One, who creates peace on high, bring peace to us and to all Israel and to all, and to all who dwell on earth. And we say, Amen. Bobby, may your memory be for blessing. And we'll see each other again for another lesson sometime in the future. Y'all have a good evening. Thank you.